All right. Here we are. We fixed a few little technical issues from last week. To be back again tonight with Kathy. Kathy's been hanging out to appear on Zooming with Dan for many months. Isn't that right, Kathy?
That's correct, Dan.
Absolutely delighted to talk to Kathy tonight. I've known Kathy far longer than anyone else at the association, from way back 6 or 7 years ago now, when I actually ran a fundraising event for MND Victoria while my dad was going through his MND journey. Kathy was my point of call, as she was the only employee in the fundraising team of MND Victoria, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But yeah, Kathy and I go way back, and you know, we've formed a pretty dynamic team over the years. So I'm really excited to talk to her tonight and to share her story a little bit wider. So I might hand over to Kathy now to talk a little bit about herself and a bit about what she does outside of MND Victoria, because I do know she's had a very exciting and a very interesting life. I'm not allowed to say this, but I don't really care. It is a very special birthday for her tomorrow. Kathy probably won't talk about that. So I might pass over to you now, Kathy, and how about you introduce yourself a little bit?
Thank you, Daniel. And yes, you and I have known each other for quite a while. And from the first time we met, I was impressed with your enthusiasm and your ability to raise funds.
Oh, you can keep
talking. Your ability to build relationships, which was great. So just a little bit about myself. I've been very fortunate. I was born and brought up in a small town in England. Spent some time in London, then came out to Australia. Lived in Sydney for about 8 years, then lived in Perth for a while, back to Sydney, then went and lived in Wisconsin in America for 15 years, adopted a daughter over there, and then after 15 years said, well, I'm going back to Australia. If the rest of you want to come with me, then that's fine, but I'm going. So returned to Australia in 2000 and actually returned to Melbourne rather than Sydney, and have been very happy here ever since. And in fact, last month was my 20th anniversary of being back in Australia. So sort of in line with the Olympics. So yeah, so that's a brief background. And what do I do other than work? If you ask my husband, he'll say not very much. But I do love to sew. I do patchwork, not terribly well, but I enjoy it. And we have a lovely garden. So we live on 2 acres. So we have a stunning garden, and like getting out in that as much as I can.
Very good. It's certainly, I still can't keep up with your life travels, but it's always interesting to hear. You say, you know, Ian may not say you do much outside of work, and that's probably because you're very invested and very dedicated to what you do, and you have been with MND Victoria for over 10 years now, and for anyone, 10 years in any role is a very long time. But you know, especially in the fundraising sector and the not-for-profit sector, it is a long time at one organisation. How about you talk to us around, you know, what your motivations are and why you love working for MND Victoria?
Yeah, well, like most people, Daniel, I had no idea what motor neuron disease was. I was looking for a move, a change. I was already in the disability fundraising sector, but I wanted to change and saw the ad and went and researched that online. And when I saw what motor neuron disease was and the way it impacted people, it really made me want to get the job, I guess. So I was very fortunate. I was one of several candidates and was successful. I got on very well, obviously, with our last CEO, Rod Harris, and was able to start working here. And to be honest, I probably didn't think I'd still be here 10 years later. I don't know, at that stage I really considered I'd still be working in 10 years when I started at MND. But to be honest, the people I've met, the people who have MND, their families and friends, the networks, the people who support them, the people who raise funds for them. They are just amazing, and they are so inspirational that you just, once you start working for MND, it gets you. You want to keep going. And I know that for myself and for the other MND associations, the fundraisers in the other state associations are all the same. They've been there a long time. They're absolutely dedicated. And, you know, as well as that, the staff, we've just got fantastic staff. Everybody gets on really well. We're a great team. And great leadership. We had great leadership with Rod and with Julie, who was our deputy CEO, and now we have fantastic leadership with Kate and Joe. So yeah, so you just feel you want to do something to support people and make their lives a little bit easier.
No, absolutely, summed it up really well. And as I briefly mentioned at the start, I joined your team nearly 4 years ago now, and I can't really imagine how hard you were working to bring in all those funds, basically just by yourself. So it's a huge credit that you've been able to hold up the fundraising team all by yourself for all those years. And I guess you've brought in the cavalry over the years now.
And it was part-time as well, Daniel. So when I started, it was 3 days a week, but after a couple of years, I did go to 4 days. And I was very thankful when I was able to convince our CEO that we should get somebody else on board, and that you came on board, and it was great. And within, I think, less than a year, we'd had you going from 3 days a week to doing a bit of work with volunteer coordination. And then we got you full time as the fundraising, and it's just been amazing since then. So it's been great.
Very, very good. Over those 10 years, why don't you discuss a little bit about the changes in not only the fundraising sector as a whole, but about how MND Victoria has gone with their fundraising results and the way that we fundraise now?
Okay, so when I started, I guess it was still very much a traditional, 2 appeals a year, a tax appeal and a Christmas appeal, a couple of donor updates. But we're obviously, we've always had people run events of some sort for us raising funds, mostly fairly small amounts of money, but everything that we get given to us it goes towards supporting somebody with MND. But like the whole charity sector, there has been a lot of competition and a lot of people. I think we've got something like 60,000 plus charities in Australia, which is a huge amount of people trying to get the dollar for the charity. But more and more we were seeing like fun runs taking place, and people wanted to do, the younger people particularly want to achieve something when they fundraise. They don't just want to give their dollars. They want to feel that they're actually doing something and participating. So we got involved with things like the Melbourne Marathon, what's the one that's just happening now? Run Melbourne, which of course didn't happen this year. And just a lot of community events. And we've always done at MND Victoria, we've always been absolutely dedicated to making sure if somebody contacts us and says they want to raise money for us and they're going to do something, well, it might be a drink tea for MND, it might be a barbecue, no matter how small that is, we're there to support them. We want to give them whatever we can to help them make it a success. We want to show them that we really believe in them and that we value what they do. So no matter the size of the fundraiser, whether it's a small fundraiser, a child, a school, or whether it's going to be a large fundraiser, we just wanted people to know that we're there to support them.
Now, you've summed that up really well. And as I'll back over it again, just that support to everyone is just something that we're proud of in terms of, how we can actually manage to do that, because we understand that, if someone's running an event or taking part in an event, they mean a lot to the organisation. So we definitely give everyone the respect, I guess, they deserve, because we say it daily, we say it hourly, almost internally and publicly as well, that the money raised for MND Victoria is used so well, and it's so needed by the nowadays 450 Victorians or so living with MND, and our story is powerful, and I guess we're proud to represent that.
Absolutely.
So very easy to do the job that we do.
Yeah, and it is, because if you have been impacted with MND, you do want to raise funds, you do want to do something to help. And it's very, it's been great that the NDIS is out there, and that does help fund people who are under age 65 when they're diagnosed, which is great. But when I first started working at MND, there was no funding for, we used to get block funding, but there wasn't like the NDIS. And even now, people who are aged over 65 when they're first diagnosed, the amount of financial support that they can access is so small, and it is so hard for them to actually get it. So it's really important that we continue to raise funds, because, for example, a power wheelchair, which gives somebody independence, they can go where they want, when they want. They don't have to rely on somebody. They cost $17,000. Well, not a lot of people have $17,000 to just, pay for a wheelchair, which may only be used for a couple of months anyway. So, but just to go back a little bit on the fundraising, also what's happened in the last few years is a lot of more international type challenge fundraising has come onto the marketplace. And that's where you and I, that's one of the first things that you did when you came on board with MND. I'd already committed us to going to China and doing the Great Wall of China walk for MND, and we were going to, raise funds. Well, when you came on board, we had, I think, just 2 people signed up. So that became your first assignment, and you did a fantastic job. And I believe you had a really good time, and we raised, what was it, $110,000?
Yeah, just a tick over. So yeah, mammoth effort by all those that took part.
Yeah, so that was amazing. So we're finding that those challenge events are really, really successful. And there's so many different ones, like, Great Wall of China. It's on everybody's, or a lot of people's bucket list. But then we've also done one locally, Larapinta, last year, which was a great fundraiser as well. And so that was really good. I mean, that raised, I don't know how much, that was 60.
Larapinta was over 110,000 as well.
110, yeah. So, and then you took a group to Kokoda, did the Kokoda trek. So those are all things where, again, there's a lot of competition out there, but people who have been impacted by MND, they want to do those things with us. And sadly, we've had to postpone a couple of those this year because of COVID, but we've got plans in the pipeline for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one thing to reiterate about these big challenge events, people that join them are typically they've been impacted by MND in one way or another. And it's an incredibly powerful challenge for them individually to not only take on a challenge, but also to be around people that have been through the same thing and understand the impacts of MND, and therefore understand the dollars that they're raising and what those dollars are doing for people living with MND now.
Yeah.
Speaking of COVID-19, we'll touch on it a bit more later, but it makes fundraising a lot more difficult, especially in the event space. We've been very busy creating a brand new Walk to D'Feet event this year. And for those that I guess have been engaged with MND Victoria over the years, they would know about the Walk to D'Feet MND, and it is our flagship event that's been operating now for 16 years. Before I go into the tour of Victoria, I thought it might be a good opportunity to talk about the history of the Walk to D'Feet MND and how it started and what it's all about. So you've been around 10 of those 16 years, so you're probably a very good person to talk it through.
Well, I did cheat a little bit. I did actually get in touch with Rod Harris and Marion Lowe to give me a little bit more of a feedback. But the walk was actually started in America by the ALS Association, and it was originally a walk into Defeat ALS. And Rod saw that and thought that could be a very good thing to have back in Australia. So when he approached the CEO over there, they were very keen for us to take it on, but they actually wanted us to pay a license fee because they'd actually trademarked the Walk to Defeat ALS. So Rod being Rod decided, well, no, we won't do that. We'll come back and we'll register Walk to Defeat MND in Australia, which he did. And with a number of volunteers, they put on their very first Walk to Defeat MND. It was at Princess Park where the walk is every year. So it's always been there, but it was in a smaller oval. And in that first year, I think they said they had around 200 people. And it was quite successful. And the goal of this walk has always been not just an awareness and a fundraiser, but it's also been somewhere where people with MND or who've been impacted by MND, either in the past or now, can actually get together and be with other people who know what they're going through. And it's a time where if you've lost somebody to MND, you as a family group can get together and remember them. So we really love the whole event. The one in Melbourne last year, we had about 2,000 people, very heavily supported by our volunteers. We couldn't do it without them. They're amazing. We have them there at 6:30 in the morning waiting for the marquees to come. So that's great. And last year, well, I did mention Marion Lowe she attended the first walk, and then she basically took over the running of it for the next probably 13 years. And then she was assisted by Joe Mantella, and Joe has done just a fantastic job as well over the last 3 years. So, and look, there's just so many fantastic volunteers that make sure that event works. I couldn't possibly think of to name them all, but I know that last year that we just had Melbourne and Bendigo because of COVID. Now, normally we have Melbourne, Bendigo, Geelong. We've started one in Southeast Pakenham. We have one in Benalla, and we had our new one in Ballarat last year. But just we were only able to hold the two, which was Melbourne and Bendigo.
We did have Ballarat. Ballarat snuck in just before COVID.
Yeah, first one for Ballarat, and they just scraped in before COVID, and we raised $220,000. So, and what that means is those funds are going to help people who are living with MND. They buy equipment, they help us run the equipment service. It's just, without those funds, we wouldn't be able to deliver the services that we do, and particularly to people aged over 65.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the walks around the state are certainly some of our favourite days on the calendar.
Yeah.
And, Melbourne, just to turn up there, I obviously turn up there nice and early, but to see the hundreds and hundreds of people arrive over the morning to culminate in a huge gathering at 10 a.m. when the walk kicks off is truly special. And I feel I've got two reasons to love it, being obviously, in the supported development and fundraising team, but also because I've lost my dad to MND. So I get both parts of the event and all those emotions, seeing so many people walking for the same reason. We often talk about our supporters as the MND community, and I think it's a really fitting way to describe the thousands of people that do walk on those.
Yeah, and it's just amazing to see them, because they almost circle the whole park, Princess Park, and they're all in their walk t-shirts, and it's just, I've been doing it 10 years, and it's just amazing to see all that. And we see the same people, every year we see the same groups coming who, when they first came, they had a member with them who had MND. And then, you know, they just keep coming back as this is the time that they get together to remember their loved one. And it is just amazing. And, you know, in all the years that it's been on, we've always managed to do it weather-wise. We might have had rain leading up to it. We might have had rain as we were putting the T-shirts out, and it might have rained as soon as we finished, but somehow we've managed to do the walk without getting soaking wet.
Yeah. Look, we've touched on COVID-19 a couple of times, and unfortunately it is something everyone talks about every single day at the moment, but it has drastically impacted fundraising, and in particular the events. And as you said earlier, MND Victoria relies so heavily on the community events and people out there that want to do their bit to raise some dollars to those that need it, those with MND. Talk us through a little bit around your thoughts around, I guess, how we've adapted, how it has impacted us, and how we are going to come out of it.
Yeah, look, again, over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, we've been talking about trying to get the state associations working closer together. And that's something that's been definitely something that's been key to our new CEO's vision. And so really about this time last year, we started talking to the other MND, like MND New South Wales, MND South Australia, WA, Queensland, etc., about let's have a national fundraising event in May through June, because May is very important. It's MND Awareness Week, and then June 21st is Global Day. So we had talked about it. We'd had a couple of discussions and meetings, and as you know, we'd started work on, or some ideas and thoughts about what we would do. Well, of course, then COVID happened. So we were in such a fortunate position because we'd already made the decision we were going to do something. We were able to turn it around, and within 3 weeks of giving the Evenico the go ahead to actually design the platform, we were ready to launch, and we launched that, and it was just an amazing success. We raised $221,000 across the whole of Australia, and we shared that between each of the states. And more than that, though, it's made each state want to share a lot more, so that's been great. But on a negative side, all our events since February have been postponed or cancelled. So all the events that we would have run, all the events that communities run for us, they've all been cancelled, and it's unlikely that any of those will start again until next year. And, you know, that's cricket clubs, that's bowling clubs, that's people having barbecues, and that raises, you know, normally raises significant funds for us. So yeah, it's going to be a very tough year. But having said that, our MND community are dedicated and committed to raising funds to care for people with MND. And we're in a very safe financial position. So we will not let anybody with MND down. They will have our 100% support, and we will just, we're just going to wrap virtual and just go with that.
Absolutely. There is no doubt that we will be able to continue providing that best possible support for everyone living with MND, even though we are in a bit of a downturn. Yeah. And we've seen the best of people. We've seen the generosity of so many of our supporters through our tax appeal this year, which set an all-time record. And although, yes, there's a lot of people struggling, there's still some very, very generous people out there that we're very appreciative of. But more importantly, those with MND are the ones that are appreciative, because without the supporters, you know, that's where the care might become an issue. But as you've said, we're doing well enough, and more than well enough.
And we're very excited because our walk this year is going to be amazing. This year, it's going to be a virtual tour of Victoria, and everybody can get involved, whether you live in Mildura or whether you live down in Portland, wherever you live, you can be part of our walk to defeat MND.
Exactly. We've been very busy over the last few weeks and even months coming up with this concept. And we really, because the walk to defeat MND is such an important brand for us, and as I said, it is our flagship event, we didn't want to lose that identity. So we've created the perfect, I think, COVID-19 edition of our Walk to Defeat MND, called the Tour of Victoria, like you just said. It's an opportunity for you, for anyone, to walk in your own neighbourhood, but while you're doing that, you're walking as the whole MND community, virtually through our 14 MND advisor regions. And those people that are connected to MND Victoria understand the importance of all our advisors who work one-on-one with everyone living with MND. So it's not only a chance for people to participate in our 16th Walk to Defeat MND, it's an opportunity for us to highlight what we do and highlight our MND advisors individually and the critical work they provide in each of their areas around Victoria. So this year's event, it's fun, most importantly, it's engaging, it's interactive. And as I said, it is a platform for everyone to learn a little bit more about what MND Victoria does. We're proud of that story.
It's very exciting the way that it's been developed, because every day we are going to be able to share information and statistics about, about the people that have MND, the important people, the people that we look after. And, it's just fantastic that we'll be able to use this as an education tool as well, I guess, that we'll be able to actually highlight in people's area that, in your area, there are 10 people living with motor neuron disease. We've shipped X number of pieces of equipment to them. It's just, it's very exciting. I get very excited about it. I get a bit carried away, I'm afraid.
That's that passion which has carried you a long way and helped MND Victoria over all these years. So look, we'd love nothing more than to be launching registrations for our in-person events where we can see the thousands of people come together, but we can't do that. So this is the next best option, and we'll engage online. We'll provide, that interaction that we all sort of want as best as we can from behind our computer screens. So,
and do you just want to share with people how you're going to end the walk on the 15th of November? Or
on the 15th of November, which would have been our event at Princess Park. That's an occasion for us to celebrate what we've just accomplished. That's the end of our 14-day stroll around Victoria, so to speak. But we'll be having a live feed for about 3 or 4 hours on the day. We'll be talking to participants. We'll be talking to people with MND, talking to carers, staff, sponsors. We'll have a great time interacting with our MND community and really highlighting where all the funds that are going to be raised will go, how many people that will support, how many pieces of equipment we'll be able to purchase. It'll just be a great celebration of everything about the MND community. So I can't wait for the 15th, but at the same time, I can't wait to tomorrow to see all the new registrants, and the day after that and the day after that. It is something that we are very passionate about. And I think I've said to you, Kathy, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I jump online to see what funds have been raised or how many new registrants we've had. But look, it's that passion that drives us. So
yeah. And can I just add, if there are any sponsors out there or anybody that works for any organizations out there who'd love to sponsor us, we're going to be going throughout Victoria. We'll be able to highlight you and your organization and how you can support us. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you.
No, very good and very important message. So for those that might be listening and are interested in joining, www.mndwalk.org.au. I'd encourage you to just jump on and have a look at it. We're excited by just how the website looks, but as I said, that registration is so important to supporting the work of MND Victoria, and then obviously the fundraising campaign that does accompany that. It's critical, especially in 2020 and where we're currently at. So yeah, we love it.
Yeah.
Probably one last thing, and you've achieved so much at MND Victoria over 10 years. What what do you want your personal legacy to be? We all know that you are on the way out and working towards that retirement that you well deserve. But what's Kathy's MND Victoria legacy?
Oh gosh, I don't think I've ever thought about that. Just that I leave a team that is as passionate as I am about MND, and I think I've done that. I think you and I have worked very well together, and with that passion, and I think I've successfully mentored you to take over my role. We've been very fortunate to take on Steph Cross, who is just a fantastic addition, and thrilled that she's now full-time. Look, my legacy is that we will continue to raise huge amounts of money so that people with MND can live better for longer, because, you know, it is just so important. A cure would be great, but that's down the road. We need to look after people today. We need to be able to give people the ability to be able to get out of bed on their own, to be able to go and have a shower, to be assisted into the shower, to be able to sit comfortably, to remain living at home, because that's what people want to do. And they want to remain being able to communicate with their family and friends. And that's it. That's my legacy. And I don't like being said that when you said I'm on my way out, but you did say transition into retirement, so that's okay. But yes, I am transitioning to retirement, but I'm very fortunate in that I do have, I will be leading that national role for another year, and I'm really thrilled about that too, because I think it's great to see all our MND associations, state associations working together.
Absolutely, and we all do, you know, so many important things all throughout Australia, just in slightly different ways. But that teamwork is critical. And I guess just to finish, you touched on it. We would all love to finish up because a cure has been found. We'd love nothing more to have no job because of that reason. But until that happens, we will be working very, very hard every single day to continue bringing in the funds that allow MND Victoria to provide that vital care and support to everyone.
Because we're the only organisation in Victoria that does that. We're the organisation that provides that care and support, and there are no other organisations that provide the care. I mean, we work so closely with Calvary and all those other places, and they're great, and they're obviously there to provide the clinical support, but the other support, it's MND Victoria. We're the only ones that provide that.
Very good. And yes, I've certainly enjoyed your passion, not only tonight, but over the last 4 years. And I think we both share that as something in common. So probably a good place to finish it. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And yeah, we'll be back hard at work tomorrow.
Exactly. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Kathy. Good night.
Night.